Hi, I'm Caroline Kohler, Partnerships and Communications Manager for Healthy Women, and I'm happy to welcome you to today's exciting episode of WomenTalk in celebration of Girlfriend's Day. This episode is close to my heart because in 2019, I was diagnosed with cervical cancer, a common type of HPV-related cancer, and connected with our guests over the shared experiences of being a survivor. I am honored to be chatting with them today. According to several studies, friendship can make you healthier. Adult women with strong social connections have a reduced risk of depression, obesity, high blood pressure, and disease. In today's show, we'll focus on the support of girlfriends and leave you with tips for how to show up for yours. For this Girlfriend's Day today, we welcome Marcia Cross, an Emmy-nominated actress, advocate, cancer thriver, and HPV Cancers Alliance co-founder. We'll be discussing her cancer diagnosis and why her close friend, Lillian Kreppel, executive director and co-founder of HPV Cancers Alliance, was so important in supporting her throughout her health journey. Lillian is a public speaker, entrepreneur, and change maker. In 2017, she added activist to that list when she was diagnosed with an HPV-associated cancer. That diagnosis and recovery led to the launch of HPV Cancers Alliance in 2019. Hello and welcome to both of you.
Hi, nice to be here.
So nice to meet you. I was really touched by your opening.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm so looking forward to this conversation. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to dive right in.
Okay, may we start with how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. I'm doing well. I'm in remission and I'm feeling healthy.
Okay, great. Did you have a LEAP procedure or what did you do to deal with your cancer?
Yes, I did not have a LEAP procedure. I was diagnosed after a few months of symptoms, and I like to say the symptoms in case anyone is experiencing them, but I had significant tailbone pain, so back pain in the tailbone area, and then I also had bleeding with intercourse and bleeding in between periods. So those are my main symptoms. And once I was diagnosed, I had chemotherapy, radiation, both internal and external. Took about 6 weeks. It was kind of like a fast and heavy treatment plan. Mm-hmm. And since then, I have been cancer-free. Thank you for asking.
You're so young. Is that, I know you're supposed to be interviewing me, but is that normal? Like, are you below the curve, or are you a good indication that there is no curve, that if we have symptoms that we just have to go to the doctor? And I'm glad you did, by the way.
Thank you. Yes. And as we'll talk about in today's episode and how I want to hear through your stories as well, but advocating for yourself is so important. And that's something that I did. Had to go to a few different doctors to get my diagnosis and just listen to my body. But I am under the age of the curve. I'm significantly under, I think, the average age for cervical cancer. So yes, I would say if you're feeling a type of way, listen to yourself, believe yourself, and go to the doctors.
Absolutely. I know for me, I wasn't having any symptoms. So okay. I got extraordinarily lucky because I didn't want to go to the doctor. I was very busy. I had a prescription I needed refilled, and my doctor wouldn't fill it because she said, no, you need to come in. And I felt very like, well, what? And then by the time I got in there, sure enough, it had been 18 months. But because, in your life gets going and you have kids and you feel like it was 5 minutes ago because time goes by so fast.
Yes.
And thank God she insisted, that I go in and see her and didn't just write a prescription for me. I'm sorry, I don't know how to shut those off. It's a girlfriend, one of my girlfriends who helped me. So it's good karma that she's.
Yes.
Yes. So it, very important how these things finally come to be, how we get in there one way or another. So I'm going to now let you, now that Lil's back.
Welcome back, Lillian. Great. Okay. Actually, Lillian, I'll direct this question to you. If you could share a bit of your story of diagnosis and how you met Marcia.
Sure. So 5 years ago, this time, actually, I remember I was with a friend and I was like, God, I'm so itchy back there. I feel like it's a hemorrhoid, but this one's very angry. It's not going away. And I said, I'm going to go see my gynecologist. I went to see her and she said I was okay. I had a pap and everything was fine, but I thought, I'm not so sure. I was, I had to listen to myself because I did have symptoms, which were blood, and not a lot, but consistent blood every day in the toilet when I went to the bathroom number 2. Sorry to be so descriptive. I'm trying to help. So I ended up seeing another doctor, and they had confirmed that I had stage 2 HPV associated anal cancer. So that's how I found out. And I'm so glad, because I'm so glad that I paid attention and didn't, say, oh, it's going to go away. And I met Marcia because she had posted something on social media about that she had just finished her cancer diagnosis. And then the next day she posted, oh, yeah, it was anal. I know, right? And I thought to myself, oh, yes, I got to get in touch with her. And it just turns out that a very good friend of mine grew up in the same town that Marcia's from and knows her sister. And I said, oh, I'm going to write a letter to Marcia via email. Could you send it to Marcia's sister? And then she did. And then Marcia connected with me and said, my sister told me, I think you need to look at this one. And P.S., we're approaching our 4-year anniversary. And I'm not happy that we got cancer, but I have to say it's brought the most amazing people into my world, including you ladies from Healthy Women, really. And I feel blessed.
Oh, I'm so lucky that both of you are here. Marcia, do you want to talk a little about, I know you mentioned that you didn't have symptoms, but a little bit further into your diagnosis?
I didn't have symptoms. I went to the gynecologist. I had a wonderful doctor who actually just retired. So she was, I want to say old school, I don't know, trained to give digital rectal exams, which I never paid any attention to, and didn't this time either. It's really no big deal. I mean, once you're there and you're open and whatever, and they just do their thing, and she's talking, and so I was lucky that was part of her exam, and she was trained enough to say, something doesn't feel right. But she didn't say that to me. She was so smart that she just said, I want you to go down the street to this other doctor. I'm not sure, might have felt. And I literally was annoyed, and not annoyed with her, but thinking, oh my God, I'm going to miss my daughter's basketball game. Like, this is where my head was, not like something's wrong with me. So I went to the doctor. Down the road, we're chatting about Halloween, and our kids were young, and she gave me an exam. She came around the table and she said, I just want you to know that whatever it is, it's curable. And I was like, talk about like, what? What is she talking about? And that was the beginning. And although I have to say, I think I just kind of dissociated, but I went to the front of the line, got to get a biopsy, all this stuff. And that's how I got diagnosed. So,
wow.
There's so much more to talk about, but let's leave that answer there.
Okay. Those were fantastic answers. Thank you both. So in what ways, in honor of Girlfriend's Day, did your girlfriend support you when you were first diagnosed, during your treatment, and post-treatment?
You go first, Lil, because
Okay. So for me, I actually, believe it or not, I had a calendar, and each of my friends filled out, which day they'd like to come with me to the hospital while I was getting treatment. I didn't need them to come with me physically. I was fine. I lived near, right across the park from the hospital. But in my mind, I was blown away. Like, what am I doing with cancer? I've never even had the flu. And by having them with me, I felt that it normalized things, especially when I'm in the waiting room looking at people, and I'm like, wow, I'm now a cancer patient. And yesterday I was normal. Mm-hmm. And if I go downstairs outside on the street in New York, I'm just normal, like I used to be. Now I'm in another category. So they supported me by being there, and also doing things like doing my laundry. I didn't have to ask them to do it. One friend brought over Thanksgiving dinner, everything from, the turkey to the string beans. She didn't leave anything out. a few days before Thanksgiving to make sure that I would have my Thanksgiving, and really just, being there for me on the phone, and they really showed up, and it was amazing. And I think helped me with my positive journey. Go ahead, Mosh.
Mosh. Wow. Well, gosh, I can't even imagine. I don't even like to think about it. I just got a little teary-eyed going through this without my girlfriends, because I call them my anal angels, because they were they just rallied around me, and I think I was a little dissociative and in denial. I mean, to the point where finally they said, "Look, you've got to get started," because I had gone to one, trying to figure out where to do it, and I didn't even want to do it at home. I wanted to go into another hospital because I didn't want to bother anybody, because that's not my thing. I'm kind of I like to be the caretaker. So it was quite a journey of surrender and allowing myself to be taken care of. And boy, did they take care of me round the clock. And like Lillian said, maybe I didn't need it, certainly at the beginning. But by the end, I would say, we know women who go through it alone, and that's really, really rough. And it does happen, and you can do it, but it's you really want support. And it was absolutely everything to me. So
yeah, I have a younger sister who is also my best friend, and she was my greatest girlfriend during my cancer diagnosis and treatment. And I agree, especially, towards the end, it's hard. It's really hard. Cancer is not easy. We're not telling anyone something they don't know with that, but having your girlfriends there to support you, people that really understand you and get you, is there's nothing better than that. So
I have to say, this is such an interesting. One of my girlfriends said to me, because I had done a trial run with this doctor, and anyway, it was a really, really nice doctor. And so I didn't want to I couldn't call him and say, I didn't want to go to him because I didn't like that particular hospital. And my girlfriend said to me, I know you. What's the hardest thing for you right now is you don't want to call him and disappoint him. Like, that's how well they knew me. They said, I will get on the phone with you and help you do this. It wasn't even about my cancer. I just felt badly. But he knew me so well to say, okay, that's enough. You have to deal with this. I know it's hard for you. Got to disappoint him. He's a doctor. It's fine. But I mean, think about that. Like, to have somebody do you so well and go, not just get mad, like get started, but understand what the hang up was for me, that my caretaking was in the way.
Yes. And that is a great segue to our next question too, because our next question was what are ways that women can show up for each other? Because I have heard not to ask and to just show up. Is that what you've found too? I think that's kind of what you're saying.
Well, yeah, it was really nice. And I know this because I had a lot of a small coterie of women that kind of organized it. I'm terrible at organizing. So with each other, they figured it out. Everybody's different. But yeah, they showed up and did their thing. And I have very little to do with it. I just sat back and was like, okay, that's the way it's going down. They were amazing. Lil, you had something similar, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Everybody, got together. Unfortunately, I didn't have my parents. They're gone. My mom at the time was in a nursing home, and I didn't even want to tell her because I didn't want her to, get nervous even for the moment that she was lucid. But so I depended on my friends, and, they were there for me, whether it was, I'd come home and there'd be balloons or a card or, they were amazing. But I will say it's funny because Marcia and I are alike in terms of the caregiving. I'll never forget. My doctor told me that toward the end, like the last week, it's going to be really bad because radiation is cumulative.
Yes.
And sometimes I had my friends sleeping over. I had my college friend, this couple. I slept in the bed with her and he slept on the couch. And he might as well be a girlfriend too, the husband. You have those husbands that you could hang out with. So he was awesome. So anyway, so they come over and I'm like, can I get you something? And she's looking at me. She's like, what are you doing? Why are you serving me? You're supposed to be sick. And like, they couldn't believe that I was like walking around and doing my thing. And listen, I'm not saying it wasn't bad because it was. And it was excruciating very painful. But I'm like Marcia, like we always want to take care of everybody else. And, it could be uncomfortable when when you're the doer and they're doing. I will say something on the other side. I do have a friend that came with me sometimes to my doctor appointments, and this is on the flip side. She's a nervous person, and so she would overanalyze and this and that, and that's not the kind of energy I needed either, because I don't need to now take care of your nervousness when I heard the word treatable and I went with the word treatable, and I'm going to get through this, and that's it. And by the way, having a positive attitude helps too.
Yeah. I agree. I think if you're when in doubt, just show up. If you're wondering, like, should I bring the food, or like, should I bring, X or Y, Z? Should I show up and help her with her laundry? I think the answer is always yes. But I agree, like keeping a positive mindset within doing those things and just reading the room, I feel like is really important during a medical diagnosis.
Absolutely.
Good advice. That's really good advice. It's not about you. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So how can women advocate for themselves and encourage each other to take care of themselves? I'll start this off with Lillian.
So I think that, with my type of cancer, HPV-related anal cancer, unfortunately, it shows up as a hemorrhoid. People, it could be misconstrued as a hemorrhoid. Very often, that's what it comes out. That's what the case is. That's what it looks like, kind of. But you really have to pay attention to yourself. That if you are having any type of symptoms, whether it's blood or your body, something's off, even if it wasn't blood. I remember sitting in Pilates class and I felt like I was sitting on something. And as I mentioned earlier, it was getting angrier. There was some pain there. So, whether a health professional may say, you're okay. You just, your body, and you want to, further look into that. So I would say, definitely take care of yourself, know your body, and don't be afraid to if something's going on and maybe someone else is saying no, you're okay. I would pay attention to yourself, to your body.
Yeah. Marcia, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. As women, we're taught to be polite and kind and deferential to those in charge. And I think it's really important to not do that in a doctor setting when you're like, you are the boss of your own body. So if you're in there and you're with a doctor, don't necessarily just take the doctor's word for it. If in fact you don't feel like that's quite right, go get another opinion. Because you know best, and that, we have to advocate for ourselves and keep going and ask questions. And sometimes that goes against our nature, which is another place where friends can be really helpful. Like sometimes I bring someone with me because it's hard for me to ask for things, or ask the questions. So I think friends can really support each other that way. I like to, I start to feel like, oh, it's too much, I'm gonna be trouble. So bring in a friend who has no problem with that, to be your shadow or to listen. All the support you can get.
Yes. Yeah. I think questions is so important. I started writing down questions, which I'm sure both of you did too. But I think before you go through something so traumatic, you might not think to write down questions before a normal doctor's appointment, whereas now it comes so secondhand to me. Or second nature, but I had a whole notebook and I would write down all my questions in the time that I wasn't at the doctor's, because that's the time when you're really having all those questions. And then when you get to the doctor's office, you can go back to your notes and read the questions from when you had them. Because oftentimes I feel like you sit down at the doctor's and they say, how have you been? What are your questions? And if you hadn't written it down, you're like, I think I'm fine. And I don't think I have questions, but you really did. It's hard to remember in those moments. So I think that's a good point to know.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I had a yellow legal pad And poor doctor, he was so nice. He was so indulgent in all my questions. And I had so many questions, and they might have been silly as, am I allowed to get my hair colored while I'm getting chemo? Things like that. So
I think that same question.
And I want to say that, though we don't do it all the time, both of us, Lillian and myself, and now we have taken other women and men through their treatment, and we have the answers to questions that a lot of doctors don't even know because they've not been through it, and that has been a wonderful way to give back. And then, like one girl, I was on the phone with her like all the time, Mary,
Mary.
Mm-hmm. And let me tell you, I said, one day you're going to be doing this. And sure enough, she's now supporting, so you give it out and then you give it back. And it's really nice to talk to somebody. And I don't know if you had this other than a doctor, because the doctor actually doesn't know. A lot of times they don't know. And the person who's been through it has a lot more advice on the question.
Yes.
So it's good to have a look from, your friends, and then, people who've been through it, have a combination.
Yes.
And it's good to, that's 100% right. And it's good to know what, like, to embrace what you're going through, and as opposed to, oh no, this is not happening and I don't even want to call it this. And I'm not okay. If you don't want to tell anybody, that's fine, but you should learn as much as you can about what you're experiencing, so you maybe could be ahead when you're going into the doctor's office, because not everybody knows everything. I just had an idea that maybe part 2 could be an anal angels retreat, all of us.
I love it.
That's what Lillian's really the brains behind the organization.
I love that. Yeah, I have a similar story too. Actually, to plug Healthy Women, I had read a Real Women, Real Stories, which is a vertical on our site, just real women telling their stories. And it was a young woman similar in the age that I was, who was diagnosed with cervical cancer. And when I read it, I felt like it was me who had written the story. And this was before I worked for Healthy Women. This is years before that. And I read it and I sent it to everyone that I know, because I felt like it was the best way to articulate what I was going through. And so I was like, I don't know if I've said this right, but this is exactly how it is. And this is what I'm experiencing. And these are the emotional effects too. And that was a girlfriend that I didn't even know. I actually ended up writing to her and just telling her how much she helped me in those moments. But it's like you have girlfriends that you don't even know are there.
Right.
It's just brilliant.
Yeah.
And for me, I always say, like, if it had been breast cancer, I would have just moved on, kept it quiet. But
right.
I was online because I'm like, what's this? What? I mean, the amount of education that I got, it took me so long to figure out, which is that you go to the doctor for a pap smear, which is to test for abnormal cells. And those abnormal cells are 95% of the time are the HPV virus. But I was almost a 60-year-old woman, and I had never heard of it. And my husband had throat cancer, and I still hadn't put it all together. In fact, they weren't even going to test me or him for the HPV virus, because at this point, I'm going to talk really fast just to get the education in, that they just assume that's what it is, because the virus is so widespread. I forgot where I was going with this. So I'm just going to stop talking.
Oh, I know where you're going.
Where was I going?
I know exactly where you're going, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. We were blindsided. Almost every person that gets anal cancer or an HPV related cancer, especially in our age group, because the younger group has already gotten the vaccine, hopefully. But we're blindsided because we're going along our life and blah, 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 blah. And I knew I had HPV, but sometimes the doctor's not necessarily calling it HPV. They might, as Marcia said, they may say you have abnormal cells. So HPV is not on the radar. You're going along your life, and all of a sudden you have cancer. What? Where did this come from? It is the furthest thing from any person's mind over 40, 50, 60 that they're getting an HPV related cancer.
But let me just jump in there and say, for the older women that are watching, not to scare you, but that is when the anal cancer, although our friend Mary that I was talking about, she's like 36. So this is not, it's like you on the other end of, your cancer, Carolyn. But postmenopausal women are the ones primarily where there's the most anal cancer. So that's also when they say, you need to go to the gynecologist. You've had your babies, but wrong. Don't listen. That's a total financial thing that the insurance company is like, we can lose a few, but you should keep going to your gynecologist for precisely that reason. So in terms of this broadcast, what I would say is, and what Lillian does for me, is bother your friends, because I hate making appointments. I hate it. I mean, I really, really hate it. And Lillian be like, did you get your Cigna? Blah, blah. I don't know, like whatever, like all these appointments. And I'm like, oh, and that's what we can do for each other, because whether it's HPV or your skin cancer check or your colonoscopy, I mean, come on, we don't even want to, it's so annoying. You need somebody to bother you to do it if you're not. I mean, there are some people that are great at that, but most of us are just busy. We're putting other people first. Who wants to do it? So it's great for your girlfriends to bother you.
Yes, I think that is such a good note to end on. I love that. Bother your girlfriends, because you're there to help. And I love the reminder of make sure you get your pap smear, make sure you go get your mammogram, make sure you're going to your annual wellness visits. If you need a colonoscopy, make sure you're doing it. And, don't be afraid to follow up. Like, hey, did you actually do it? Did you actually schedule it? Aww.
Yeah.
And don't look the other way. I have so many people that I know that are like, no, I haven't had a pap in like 8 years. And I'm like, what are you waiting for? Like,
people are you just have to push each other. It's just,
I know.
It's a little bit of the human condition, but women are phenomenal.
Marcia said I can annoy her. She gave me carte blanche that I can annoy her anytime. So it's good.
I love that.
It's
You
true.
guys are great girlfriends. Okay, we are going to take some questions from the audience now. So our first question from the audience is, what's the best advice you've been given by a girlfriend during your health journey? And Lillian, I'll give this to you first again.
So the best advice that I was given was, yes, you normally go about your routine. You go to the gym, you do this, you do that, but you're not normal right now. So you need to lean into it, and maybe you need to rest. Maybe you need to, do X, Y, Z or not do X, Y, Z. It's just 6 weeks of your life, and just hunker down, and, you'll get back to the gym eventually. But just lean into it, accept the diagnosis, don't fight it, and hopefully, it'll work out.
Marcia, do you have something to add?
I don't know if it was advice, but what I think is really important and hard for a lot of people is to, when you're going through something like that, you have to have the ability to receive. And what I learned from that was that it was as equally, me receiving was one thing, but they actually got the gift of giving, which is a wonderful thing to feel great about helping somebody else. So it's very reciprocal. So if you think, oh, it's all about me and you're uncomfortable, try to remember that there's a lot of, joy and love and satisfaction that comes from helping your friend, and that you're not a burden. You're actually giving them a gift. You're giving them a gift to be able to let them help you. It's so odd, but it's true.
Oh, it's so true. Yeah. Yeah. For me, my sister said I think that people expect when you finish cancer, you have this certain level of bliss. And sometimes it's a little bit more complicated than that. And she said, you don't have a ticket to know all the answers in life, but you have a ticket to get back on the roller coaster that is life. And that is something that's really stuck with me. So that would be the advice that I was given. Yeah. We're going to go to our last question now. Another one from the audience. Let's see. Do you have one last piece of advice for all the girlfriends out there listening? And I'll give this to Marcia first.
Well, okay, this is a little bit not exactly on the nose, and I don't want to diss all men, okay? But my husband, who I love, is in finance, okay? And so I think here's my advice. Don't expect your husband to necessarily be the caretaker of you. I've talked to women who have, that have husbands who've done it, but sometimes it's really our girlfriends we're the mamas, we're the nurturers, and not to be upset with your husband. Give your husband a job he can do. Like I was like, honey, you got the kids, and he took care of the kids, and he drove them here, and he did this and that. and not to get upset with your husbands when they're not the ones who are like, being the total nurturers. I know that's weird, but like,
that's great.
No, it's true.
It doesn't mean they don't love you. It's just not in their wheelhouse, and don't go through this and then blame it on like, why aren't they, blah, blah, and tell them what to do, because they need to be told, and they'll be there for you.
I think that's so awesome and great advice for everybody, Marcia, because, some people may be consumed, oh, I'm so, poor me kind of thing. And I think that's fantastic. So that's an amazing point. I want to say one thing that I didn't say before, that, having HPV, you didn't do anything wrong to get it. We all have HPV because it is a skin-to-skin virus, and it's caused by you're human. You're doing, you don't even have to have sex to get it. You can get it from open mouth kissing. So don't be ashamed. Don't be embarrassed. We pretty much all have it. And by the way, you can get tested. It's called a co-test. You can ask your gynecologist for that. They should be doing that already. But you didn't do anything wrong. Don't worry about the stigma. Let's bring the stigma down. We all have it.
Yeah. And also, I wasn't testing positive for HPV, and I still wound up getting anal cancer. So you just got to go to your checkups, because
you
may test out in your body and show up later.
Yeah, it lays dormant. It's a sneaky virus, and it may show. Like when I had anal cancer, my doctor said that I was fine, because my pap was fine, but I had anal cancer.
Yeah, nothing to be ashamed of. And if you're feeling the type of way, go to the doctors and advocate for yourself. Thank you both so much for joining us today for such a beautiful, candid conversation. And thank you to our audience for joining us for another conversation on Women Talk. Join us for our next episode, which is Women Talk Fibroids, on August 10th at noon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is awesome.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Women Talk. Stay tuned for more Healthy Women Live events at www.healthywomen.org. You can also follow us at Healthy Women on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or LinkedIn, or follow us on Instagram at healthywomen.org. We'll see you next time.